welcome back to my channel. Thanks for tuning into another video. It's been a couple of weeks since my last one, as I just haven't had the time, to be honest. Trying to find the time to film these and then edit and everything, it does add quite a bit of extra time on top of a full-time job and with the refurb that we're doing on the house as well. So yeah, sorry it's not been as regular as I was wanting, but hopefully I can try and still bring you a video at least every couple of weeks. And for the ones I've done so far, you guys seem to be preferring the videos where I talk about HA and weight gain, so I'll definitely keep bringing more of those. But if there's anything else you want to see, just let me know below. So today's video is going to be a Q&A. So I put up a questions box on my Instagram stories yesterday, and I'm just going to answer all those questions now. I've not actually looked at the questions yet, so yeah, it'll be a surprise to me as they are to you. And if I'm looking for sites, because all my questions are on my laptop because I'm filming with my phone because I still haven't bothered getting a camera yet. So I think the bulk of the questions are probably going to be on HA and weight gain, and there might be the odd other one in there, but predominantly that's what people seem to want to ask me questions on, which is great. As you probably have guessed, I love talking about it. I love spreading as much awareness as possible about HA and the benefits of getting your period back and the best ways to do that. So yeah, hopefully you find these Q&As useful. And if you haven't already gone to my Instagram page, I do generally do these at least once a week. So if you do have any other questions, always feel free to ask them on Instagram as well. First question is thoughts on adding in protein powder and being afraid that that might blunt appetite and result in the person eating less. So I've always added protein in my diet, probably protein powder into my diet, probably for the past 4 years or so. I think I've been supplementing with protein, particularly around breakfast. I probably only have 1 scoop of whey protein a day max. I try not to have any more than that, and then I also have like a protein bar probably in the afternoon. But from my point of view, it's never resulted in me feeling fuller. If anything, I would say it does the opposite. So if you're going to be getting a scoop of protein powder, which will probably get you, around 25 grams of protein, if you ate 25 grams of protein worth of eggs or chicken or fish or whatever it is, that's more likely to be filling than protein powder. I don't find it filling at all. I mean, if I had a protein shake, that wouldn't fill me up, or adding a bit of protein to your porridge. I think it does keep you slightly fuller for longer because you're adding the protein in, but that's just the addition of protein rather than the addition of the protein powder. So I think whatever protein you use, obviously if you're having a high protein diet, that could keep you fuller for longer. So I think it's just being mindful that although you want to make sure you get enough protein in, actually you could prioritise carbs and fats a bit more during HA recovery, which is what I tried to do. And the second question is how to deal with clicky bones and joints. I'm not sure of the correlation between this and HA. So this was actually a question I've had a couple of times recently, and it's actually something I'd never thought about. So someone asked me last week on Instagram whether I experienced clicky joints and clicky bones during HA recovery, and I did actually. But I've got to be honest, I have no idea what the correlation is. So I don't want to tell you something that, isn't true. So I'm not sure what the correlation is, or even if there is a correlation, or it's just coincidence. But I definitely found during HA recovery that particularly my knees, they were cracking, and in fairness, they still do a little bit now. But they were cracking a lot and they were really clicky. And like I say, I really don't know what the correlation is. I did speak to like a nutritionist at the time, just out of interest, and she said that it shouldn't be anything to worry about, and it's often just air escaping. But yeah, I don't know. If anyone knows, let me know, or just comment below, and then other people can find out as well. But as far as I know, there's no particular correlation, but it does seem to be common that a few people seem to experience this during recovery. Were your initial cycles short once you had recovered from HA? Mine were actually the opposite. So my cycles were really long. So the first 3 cycles were plus 38 days. So probably a good 7 or 8 days longer than your average. And I think it just varies. I think everyone's different. I think some people have short cycles, some people have longer cycles. It took me probably about 6 months for my cycles to kind of become more regular. So I'm now around 31 day cycle, which is actually still longer than average. but it's come down quite a bit from being, like I say, like 38 plus. Between my first and second period, I think it was actually about 43, 44 days. So my second one was quite a bit later. And again, I've heard a lot of people tend to get either really long ones or really short ones. And I think the main thing to take away from that is not to worry if it is longer or it is shorter than normal. And over time, particularly after you've had the first sort of 4 or 5, you should start to find that your body finds a bit more of a regular cycle, as long as you keep the things in that you were doing during HA recovery. So as long as you don't all of a sudden obviously massively increase exercise or try and lose weight or just reduce your calories too much, then your body should feel happy enough to find its regular rhythm. Any fear of overshooting your set weight when working on getting your period back? So I think that's a difficult one, because I think in a way that's somebody who's saying they're almost scared to gain too much weight, and I can completely understand where that person's coming from. It is scary, particularly when you first start the recovery. You don't know how much weight your body's going to need to put back on before you get your period back. And there's talk about this set point weight, which I've talked about a bit before in different videos. And basically that's just kind of your body's happy place. So the weight that your body feels comfortable at in order to have a cycle. And that can vary, and I've heard quite a bit in terms of the research that often people do need to overshoot that. So for example, the weight that you were at when you last had your period, people often have to go past that weight, and it's just because your body is obviously so cautious from the fact that it's been in a deficit or underfueled or over-exercised for quite a long period of time, that it takes it a little bit longer to feel comfortable and to feel safe enough to have that cycle. But often then it does reduce. So I know a lot of people, they get the period back, maybe hover at that weight for a little bit, might sometimes lose a tiny bit of weight as their body kind of settles into what is that set point weight. So I think sometimes, like I say, you do have to overshoot it, and that is just part and parcel of the recovery process. But that doesn't mean then you're at that weight forever. It might just be short term while your body like readjusts, and it does readjust. I have done a video all about dealing with weight gain if that's something you are struggling with, and I'll link it below and also pop it up here. How old are you? Dun, dun, dun. I'm 33. Old. So probably a lot older than some of you watching this. I kind of feel like a bit of an oldie on Instagram and YouTube these days. I started my Instagram account about 4 or 5 years ago, and it's funny, I feel like everyone else is getting younger around me and I'm just the only one getting older, which is obviously ridiculous. But yeah, creeping towards mid-30s, it kind of feels a bit scary. How did you deal with people's opinions about weight gain? I don't think I had any negative opinions, or I never had any negative comments about it. I think from my experience, it was generally been all positive. So in terms of things like my family and friends have said, it's all been really positive. In terms of actually what I'm seeing on Instagram, it's really positive. I think that is partly the accounts I follow. So I think sometimes being wary of what you're following on social media and how that influences you. So I tend to follow a lot of accounts now that are about body positivity, that are about dealing with weight gain in a positive way and the benefits of weight gain. And because I'm very much promoting that as well, I think I just kind of naturally absorb myself in all the positivity around it and purposely ignore the negative, because I think that's sometimes the difficulty, is if you look to seek out some of those negative opinions, or you almost put those negative opinions on yourself, then that's when it becomes really hard. Whereas if you almost do the opposite and search for all the positive things, so listening to positive podcasts on weight gain, on regaining your period, following people on Instagram about that, YouTube, I think you can almost quite easily just immerse yourself in that positivity around weight gain, and that's exactly what I did. And I haven't had a single negative comment at all about weight gain from anybody, which is obviously really great, and I hope that's been the same for the majority of you as well. Have you ever felt over-focused on food during your recovery journey? Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think it's hard not to be. In a way, it's difficult because I think you almost sometimes swap one obsession for another. And a lot of people that tend to get HA are often your type A personalities. So people that are really, they're kind of all or nothing really. And once they've stuck to something, they will stick to something. And I think I was similar in that when I was quite lean, I was very focused on eating foods that enabled me to stay that lean. So I was very food focused then. And then HA recovery, I did almost swap that for food focused in terms of making sure I ate enough. And it's hard not to constantly be thinking, right, what am I going to have for lunch to make sure I'm eating enough? What am I going to have for dinner to make sure I'm eating enough? What shall my snack be? And I think definitely for the first couple of months, I was definitely over-focused on food. But actually, once I started regaining the weight, I learned to just trust my intuition. I had a bit of a routine, set plan on what I was eating and when, and I'd kind of learned the amount of calories I was eating to gain that weight, and it became my new routine, so I was less focused on it, if that makes sense. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm a big foodie, I love my food, so I'm still always thinking about my next meal, but that's more from a place of just enjoyment rather than a place of anxiety. So I think it depends on why you're over focused on the food. If it's because you just want to make sure you're eating enough, and again, it's more of a place of enjoyment and being conscious of, I need to sort of hit roughly that 2,500 calorie mark, then I think it can be a good thing. But it's just being wary of when that might tip the other way and become something that's making you anxious. And that's when you might need to sort of seek more support or help from someone like a nutritionist or a dietitian. Have you ever suffered from binge eating or extreme hunger? I think I'm going to say no on that one. I've definitely never had any binge eating issues. I know a lot of people who've had HA often have gone through periods of binge eating. I do get asked about it quite a bit, but it's definitely something that has thankfully never affected me. Extreme hunger, I think that's a really hard one because I think it is so subjective, and I think I may have answered this one on my last Q&A. I would say periods of time I've definitely felt like doesn't matter what I eat, I'm just really hungry, and I got that just before I got my period back. I got that when I first started increasing my calories. I do sometimes still get days like that now. Again, it's usually around just before I start my period again, but I wouldn't really call it extreme hunger like I think some people feel. It's not to the point that then leads me to binge eating, if that makes sense. So I always still feel in control of it, which is probably the difference between someone who extreme hunger that leads them to being out of control with food, or extreme hunger that just means you actually just end up eating a lot more than you normally would that day. So I would say no to both of those things, but again, I think if you do feel like you're really struggling with those kind of things, then it's definitely best to seek professional help to see if there is a way you can kind of come out of that. And I've heard so many positive stories from people who've gone through that and come out the other side and no longer binge eating and have a really good relationship with food. So just know that that can happen and it will happen, and you just need to get the right support to do that. Did you have signs before your first recovery period? I did. I had quite a lot of signs actually. So one of the key ones was 2 weeks before my first period, I noticed a drop in weight. I generally tracked my weight every week. I just found it really useful. I know some people that they wouldn't want to do that, but for me, I actually found it quite useful to see the scales going up because I knew I was doing the right thing. But 2 weeks before my period, my weight suddenly dropped. And I remember putting something on my Instagram stories, and somebody messaged me saying, this could be a good sign that your period's coming back. And I said, wow, I would have never have linked those things. But apparently it could be due to hormones. So that was one of the first signs, and they were right. It was a sign of my period. And then for probably about a week, I had lots of different signs. I was more emotional. I was way more hungry than normal. I had quite sensitive boobs. What else? There was definitely loads of other signs. I had some spotting for probably about 3 or 4 days before. Cervical mucus, had increased amounts of that. Have I said I'm emotional? don't know. Anyway, definitely emotional. And I'm not an emotional person, so for me, I was like, whoa, what the hell is this? Why do I feel like I want to cry? And I think I did cry randomly a couple of times for like absolutely no reason, and I didn't have a clue what it was about. So I knew that was like, does this mean something? I felt really warm. That was another thing. My body temperature definitely spiked. And I know that's supposed to happen around ovulation, but I felt it for like a couple of weeks before. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just, again, like that surge in hormones. But I definitely felt warmer. And I think that was it. Yeah, watch out for any of those signs, and don't be discouraged if you see loads of those signs and then nothing happens, because I have heard like sometimes I think people can get a couple of months of this, so it's almost their cycle returning to normal, but they don't get the proper build-up they need in order to properly ovulate. I've got to be honest, I don't know all the science behind it, but yeah, I just know that you can almost have like a full cycle and have a lot of the signs and symptoms of having a period without actually having the bleed, and it's because you've almost not quite reached the threshold levels to cause that, but it means you're doing all the right things. So if you get those signs, then basically just keep doing what you're doing. Oh, someone asked me what I thought of cupping. So a couple of weeks ago, I went and got acupuncture and cupping done on my back and hamstrings. I've always got like really tight hamstrings. It's just one of those areas for me. Always have tight hamstrings. I'm quite flexible within my hamstrings, and I stretch them a lot. I do a lot of yoga to try and help them, but they're always tight. So every now and again I go and get acupuncture and cupping done. And someone was asking me about that. And yeah, it's like, it feels really strange at the time when you've got these big cups on your back. It basically causes your skin to withdraw up into the cup and leaves like a horrific bruise. But it's supposed to help with blood circulation and repair of the muscles. And I definitely feel like it helps. Like initially you almost feel a bit worse, I think, because obviously you're bruised and a bit battered, but about 3 or 4 days afterwards, definitely notice quite an increase in the flexibility and
looseness, if that's the word,
of my muscles. So if you've kind of suffer with like tightness, I definitely recommend trying it. And the same with the acupuncture, I definitely feel like it helps release some of that tension in my muscles. Have you ever experienced burnout? Definitely experienced burnout, but not for a long time. So I went through a period of time when I first started getting PT sessions. I just started to learn about tracking calories, and I first started learning about strength sessions. And when I had the PT, he gave me a program to follow, and it was my first ever strength training program. Before that, I was pretty much typical, kind of went to gym classes, that kind of thing, but never did a strength session. And this was probably about 5 years ago. And I went for it. So, because I absolutely was like, oh my God, I love this. Like, why have I never lifted weights before? I completely went for it. And I honestly could say, like, I think I was doing like at least 6 days a week, if not sometimes more than that. I mean, I would sometimes go 10, 11 days without having a rest day. And I never actually felt at the time that I'd reached burnout, but I definitely did. And at the time I was also doing up a flat I had. So I was literally going from work to the gym to doing DIY stuff at the flat, not getting back till like 7:30, 8, and then quickly getting some food, going to bed. It was like non-stop. So, and I remember a period of time where I was thinking, God, is this like adrenal fatigue almost? And I think I probably did hit that, but I did kind of just keep pushing myself. And I think I probably hit a point in time, looking back, where I think I went on holiday and it broke the cycle, because I couldn't go to the gym as much, and obviously I wasn't tracking and things like that. So I think the way I broke that burnout cycle at the time was by going on holiday, and I think the break then made me realise that actually I was doing way too much, and I did then reduce it a bit after that. But it's so easy to kind of get carried away, particularly when you're new at something, because particularly when you find something you're really enjoying, it's hard to then want to have rest days. And at the time I wasn't aware enough of nutrition to make sure I was eating enough as well for the exercise I was doing. After having your first period, what to do? So once you've had your first period, I would basically keep everything the same for at least 3 months, if not longer. This just gives your body the time to try and get back into a normal cycle, and also just to make sure that, you know, after one cycle, if you try and do things differently, that can quite easily just push your second cycle off. Your body's really sensitive in that first sort of 3 or 4 month period. So I would definitely say, have your first period, and I mean, obviously that's amazing, like you should be celebrating, you should be so proud, but just make sure you don't make any changes for at least 3 or 4 months. I definitely didn't. I didn't increase exercise. I didn't change what I was eating. And the funny thing was the second I did notice an increase in my cycle. So then I went back again. So I think it's difficult because I think after HA, your body is so much more sensitive and it's so easy to lose your cycle again, unfortunately. So you just have to be a lot more mindful of what you're doing. Do you think it's possible to gain weight eating only plant-based and vegan foods? Of course, it definitely is possible. I would definitely say it's harder because you've got to be more aware of what you're eating, because naturally, obviously, plant-based vegan foods are lower in calories. So in that instance, I would make sure I was definitely getting enough protein and probably adding quite a few protein substitutions if you enjoy them. It would be really helpful, particularly things like tempeh, which is quite high in calories, so it's much higher in calories than tofu. If you're just plant-based and not vegan, things like eggs can be quite good as a protein source. Adding loads of things like lentils, and definitely making sure you're getting a lot of carbs in, so really high volume like bowls of rice and potato, any way to make sure you're increasing calories. Adding in healthy fats is probably really key for those of you who are vegan and plant-based. So adding lots of peanut butter, tahini, oils, coconut milk, things that are really quite high in fat, but are also really good for you. Obviously lots of nuts, lots of seeds. Just make sure that every plate you make is quite balanced with being high in healthy fats, carbs and protein. And by that way you should get enough in, but you will probably have to eat foods which aren't as healthy, just to make sure you're getting enough calories in. So eating things like your sweet treats and your snacks and your chips and your pizzas, vegan pizza, but all those kind of things. Otherwise, if you try and gain weight on a very healthy vegan diet, I think it will be hard. It's not to say it's not possible, but I think it will be a lot harder because the volume of food you're eating, if you're eating a lot of fruit and lots of vegetables, it's just filling. So you feel like you're full when actually you've probably eaten a couple hundred calories. So you've just got to be a lot more mindful of what you're eating. And I would almost try and tally up each meal, not track it, but roughly add up. So particularly things like adding up roughly like the fats. So if it's like an avocado bowl with rice and tempeh, just adding up roughly what the tempeh would be, what the rice would be, and what the avocado would be, just to make sure you're hitting a good amount of calories. And then obviously everything else, it doesn't matter, that's just bonus. Again, I'm not saying track, I'm just saying being mindful of the calories in each of your meals, just to make sure it roughly will add up to the amount that you need for that day. Last question, can you recommend a nutritious smoothie as a morning snack for weight gain? Definitely, I love a good smoothie. So one of my favourites is one frozen banana, a handful of frozen cauliflower, which I've pre-steamed, a handful of frozen berries, a tablespoon or 2 of peanut butter, almond milk, a scoop of protein powder. I'd usually go chocolate because I just love chocolate and peanut butter. And then I would also add like 30 grams of oats in and a bit of spinach as well. And that can all add up to about 400 calories. So it's kind of a great like snack. And obviously you can adjust that. So if, for example, that was going to be your breakfast, then I would add in like a good 50 grams of oats. It make like a really thick, nutritious smoothie. Or if it's a snack, you could add slightly less oats or even miss the oats out. But I just love a good smoothie. And hopefully it's going to start getting warmer here. Then it'll feel more like smoothie weather, because I've definitely been on like an oat train at the moment. I love smoothies, but it's just not quite felt warm enough for smoothies. And I've been loving making like my breakfast oat bars at the moment. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I'm constantly posting breakfast oat bars. What I do is make up a batch on Sunday and then I eat during the week, and it's like really handy. Anyway, so that was the questions. hopefully they were useful. Like I said earlier, let me know if you've got any more questions, and I promise to try and make these videos a little bit more regular. I'd love to bring you more, and just let me know if you have any ideas or suggestions of things you'd like to hear more about in terms of HA, weight gain, what I eat in a day, anything basically, just let me know. And I will catch you all in the next one. Oh, and please subscribe, that would be amazing and really does help me out. And I just, like I've said in previous videos, I just want to reach loads of people, and I'd love it if you would subscribe, and if you could tag me and share it on Instagram if you've watched this, that would be amazing. So yeah, have a good rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next one.